For an 8IO class, it is recommended to have around 50 to 60 questions in the test. This provides a sufficient number of questions to adequately assess the students' understanding of the material without overwhelming them. An open book test allows students to refer to their notes and materials during the test. This format can help reduce anxiety and allows students to focus on applying their knowledge rather than memorizing facts. A passing score of 70% is a reasonable threshold for this type of class. This indicates that students have a solid understanding of the majority of the material. Dedicate 6.5 hours for instruction, 1 hour for the tests, and 30 minutes for grading and review. This allocation of time provides ample time for students to complete the test and for you to review and discuss the answers. Consider the question difficulty. The questions should range in difficulty to assess students' understanding of both basic and more complex concepts. Include a variety of question types, such as multiple choice, true or false, short answer, and fill in the blank. Ensure that the questions cover all of the key topics included in the 6.5 hours of instruction. Take the time after the test to review the answers and provide feedback to the students. This helps reinforce learning and identify areas where they may need additional support. It is crucial that you consider the number of questions, test format, passing score, time allocation, question difficulty and types, and material coverage when creating the test. Also, it is very important to provide review and feedback. Remember that the goal of the test is not just to assess the students' knowledge but also to help them learn and grow as electricians. Make sure the questions are clear and unambiguous. Avoid using jargon or technical terms that the students may not be familiar with. Provide clear instructions for each section of the test. Make sure the test is properly formatted and easy to read. Consider the layout and font size to ensure readability. Double-check the test for any errors or typos before administering it. This will help to avoid confusion and ensure fairness. When grading the tests, be consistent and fair in your scoring. Use a rubric or answer key to ensure that all students are graded according to the same standards. Provide students with detailed feedback on their performance. This will help them to understand their strengths and weaknesses and identify areas where they need to improve. Create a positive and supportive learning environment. Encourage students to ask questions and seek help when they need it. Let them know that you are there to support them in their learning journey. Consider using different teaching methods to cater to different learning styles. Some students may learn best through lectures, while others may prefer hands-on activities or group discussions. Incorporate a variety of teaching methods into your lessons to keep students engaged and motivated. Use real-world examples and case studies to illustrate key concepts. This will help students to see how the knowledge they are learning can be applied in practical situations. Provide opportunities for students to practice their skills. This could include working on projects, completing assignments, or participating in simulations. The more opportunities students have to practice, the more confident they will become in their abilities. Encourage students to work together and learn from each other. Peer learning can be a valuable tool for reinforcing knowledge and developing teamwork skills. Create a classroom environment that is conducive to learning. This means minimizing distractions, providing adequate lighting and ventilation, and ensuring that students have access to the resources they need. Continuously evaluate your teaching methods and make adjustments as needed. Get feedback from students and colleagues to identify areas where you can improve. Be open to trying new things and experimenting with different approaches. Remember that teaching is a continuous learning process. There are always new things to learn and new ways to improve your skills. Stay up to date with the latest trends and developments in the electrical industry. Attend conferences, read industry publications, and network with other professionals. This will help you to stay informed and provide your students with the most relevant and up-to-date information. Be a role model for your students. Show them what it means to be a professional electrician. Demonstrate your commitment to safety, quality, and ethical behavior. Inspire them to pursue their goals and achieve their full potential. Remember that you have the power to make a positive impact in the lives of your students. By providing them with a high-quality education and preparing them for successful careers, you can help them to build a brighter future. Now let's consider specific types of questions to include. Firstly, multiple-choice questions. These are relatively easy to grade and can assess a wide range of knowledge. Secondly, true or false questions. These are useful for testing basic concepts and definitions. Thirdly, short answer questions. These require students to demonstrate their understanding of the material by writing a brief response. Fourthly, fill-in-the-blank questions. These test students' ability to recall specific information. Fifthly, problem-solving questions. These require students to apply their knowledge to solve real-world problems. Sixthly, code calculation questions. These assess students' ability to apply the National Electrical Code, or NEC, to calculate things like conductor size, overcurrent protection, and voltage drop. Seventhly, diagram interpretation questions. These require students to interpret electrical diagrams and schematics. Eighthly, troubleshooting scenarios. These present students with a hypothetical electrical problem and ask them to diagnose the cause and recommend a solution. When designing your test, consider the Bloom's taxonomy levels. These include remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. Ensure that your questions assess students' understanding at different levels of cognitive complexity. For example, some questions may simply require students to recall facts, while others may require them to analyze a situation and apply their knowledge to solve a problem. Also, it is important to align your test questions with the learning objectives of your course. Each question should assess the specific learning objective. This will ensure that the test is a valid and reliable measure of students' knowledge and skills. When writing multiple-choice questions, make sure that the distractors are plausible. Distractors are the incorrect answer choices. They should be related to the correct answer and not obviously wrong. This will make the questions more challenging and ensure that students must actually understand the material to answer them correctly. Avoid using negative wording in your questions. For example, avoid questions that ask which of the following is not true. Negative wording can be confusing and make it more difficult for students to answer the questions correctly. Be careful when using always or never in your answer choices. These words often indicate that the answer choice is incorrect. Students may be able to guess the answer without actually knowing the material. Provide clear and concise instructions for each section of the test. Make sure students understand what is expected of them. This will help to reduce anxiety and ensure that they are able to focus on answering the question. Consider using a variety of question formats to keep students engaged. This could include mixing multiple choice, true or false, short answer, and problem-solving questions. A variety of question formats can help to assess students' understanding of the material in different ways. When reviewing the test after it is administered, pay attention to the questions that students miss most often. This can provide valuable insights into areas where students are struggling and where you may need to provide additional instruction. Use the results of the test to inform your future teaching. Identify areas where students are doing well and areas where they need more support. Adjust your teaching methods and materials accordingly. Remember that assessment is an ongoing process. It is not just about giving tests. It is about gathering information about students' learning and using that information to improve your teaching. By using effective assessment practices, you can help your students to achieve their full potential. Let's discuss open book tests in more detail. Open book tests can be a valuable tool for assessing students' ability to apply their knowledge. They allow students to refer to their notes and materials, which can help to reduce anxiety and allow them to focus on problem solving. However, open book tests also present some challenges. It is important to design the test carefully to ensure that it is a valid and reliable measure of students' knowledge and skills. One of the key considerations when designing an open book test is the type of questions that you ask. Avoid asking questions that simply require students to look up the answer in their notes. Instead, focus on questions that require them to apply their knowledge to solve problems or analyze situations. For example, You could ask students to calculate the voltage drop in a circuit, select the appropriate size conductor for a given application, or troubleshoot a hypothetical electrical problem. These types of questions require students to understand the underlying principles and apply them to real-world situations. You can also use case studies to assess students' ability to apply their knowledge. Present students with a detailed scenario and ask them to analyze the situation and recommend a course of action. This type of question requires students to integrate their knowledge from different areas and apply it to a complex problem. It is also important to set clear expectations for students regarding the use of their notes and materials. Tell them what types of materials they are allowed to use and what types of materials are prohibited. For example, you may allow them to use their textbooks, notes, and calculators, but prohibit them from using the internet or communicating with other students. You should also emphasize that simply copying information from their notes is not sufficient. They must be able to understand the information and apply it to the questions. When grading open book tests, it is important to focus on the students' reasoning and problem-solving skills. Look for evidence that they understand the underlying principles and can apply them to real-world situations. Do not simply give them credit for writing down the correct answer if they do not show that they understand why it is the correct answer. Provide students with detailed feedback on their performance. This will help them to understand their strengths and weaknesses and identify areas where they need to improve. Encourage them to ask questions and seek help if they are struggling with the material. Remember that the goal of an open book test is not just to assess students' knowledge but also to help them learn and grow as electricians. By designing the test carefully and providing students with detailed feedback, you can help them to develop the skills they need to succeed in their careers. Finally, consider the use of technology in your teaching. There are many online resources available that can help you to create engaging and effective lessons. For example, you can use online simulations to allow students to practice their skills in a safe and controlled environment. You can also use online quizzes and assessments to track students' progress and identify areas where they need more support.